Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today, as a little Halloween treat, we are getting to a donation reward for Sweet Venom. And yeah, I know Halloween is at the end of the month and we're still at the beginning, but it's still spooky month. It's all Halloween. The entire month is Halloween, alright? Yeah, this is a donation reward for Sweet Venom, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. This is a 1949 Disney animated film that I've surprisingly never seen it. And the thing is, I actively have known I've never seen it and just never got around to watching it. I actually saw like this knockoff one, like called the Pumpkin of Sleepy Hollow or something like that. I don't know. It was mentioned in the Discord. Venom mentioned it there, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's something like that. Um, it was like this really cheap, crappy one, and I think I might have seen like another like really cheap knockoff one, if maybe, but I never saw this one. Um, and I know that for sure because I know what Ichabod Crane looks like in this one. I have never seen this. Um, Apparently, this was also doubled with another short based on The Wind in the Willows. It was paired in this like combination called Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Um, I don't think I've ever seen that one either. So interesting little thing there. At least from what I saw again when I just looked on Google Images, it didn't look familiar at all. But yeah, it's like it's kind of surprising because I've seen a lot of the older Disney stuff, but I guess there's still some things that just escaped me for whatever reason. Um, this is one of them, and it's not too surprising. It's just one of those things that I just never got around to, which for me is not surprising because there's a lot that I've never gotten around to. There's a lot of movies, a lot of movie franchises that I've just never seen, at least until recently for some of them. Um, and yeah, this isn't even a movie really. It's a short. It was kind of packaged as a movie as the Ichabod and Mr. Toad thing with Wind in the Willows, but otherwise it's like a 30-minute short, more like a TV special equivalent. um, but yeah, so obviously I know the story of the Headless Horseman and Sleepy Hollow and Ichabod Crane and all of that. um, I've seen like multiple live action adaptations. I've seen the character of Ichabod Crane even used in like video games like The Wolf Among Us. Very different portrayal there, mind you, but still. Um, and yeah, it's just a very classic story, a very classic character. I don't remember every single detail because outside of The Wolf Among Us, I haven't seen any Sleepy Hollow related stuff in a long time. But I've just seen a bunch of it in the past. From what I remember, I believe Ichabod Crane is a school teacher. Um, I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think he's a bit of a flirt with women in town. And he's eventually run off by the Headless Horseman. And I don't know if it's ever said, like, if he actually dies or anything. But I think it's actually left open ended. I think it's meant to be vague. Um, Again, I've seen multiple variations of this in the past. I think the character might have been in that one TV show. God, why can't I think of the name of the show? The one TV show that brought in literally everything Disney related. Which, I mean, this is not originally Disney, but like, God, what was it called? It, it, it wasn't called Storybrooke, I know that, but the town they lived in was called Storybrooke. I hope someone knows what I'm talking about. I can't think of it for the life of me. That series just went to shit after a while. It stopped being about the story and became more about references. Giancarlo Esposito was in that, though. He was the magic mirror who was also the genie. And Robert Carlyle was Rumpelstiltskin, who was also the crocodile from Peter Pan, and the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, and probably a bunch of other things. It's just like they combined way too much, way too many things, and it just didn't work. There was a lot that was good about that show, but yeah, I think that Sleepy Hollow was represented in there though. Either way, I'm definitely interested to see how this version of the story goes, um, and to just kind of relive a classic Halloween, well, classic, um, in a way that I just haven't seen before. Um, so, just like any reaction, it's redirected, so let us get this going. Uh, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect video and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it on 100 free, come back here and resume this redirect. Because when it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the special. I'm going to call it a special. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, let me explain the change of shirt, first of all. So, I started recording this yesterday while my dad was out, and unfortunately, he came home earlier than I was expecting. Granted, I didn't know how long he was going to be out in the first place, but I was hoping he'd be out a little longer. He came home earlier than I was expecting, and because of that, I had to stop the recording. Started again now, the next day. I remembered everything that happens beforehand, so didn't need a refresher, really. Just continued straight into it. So yeah, sorry for that sudden cut and everything there. Um, really just wasn't something I could help. Anyway, let's talk about this. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the Disney animated version. I don't remember, like, all the details about how other incarnations that I've seen have gone, like the movies, the live-action movies and stuff. And I read the book, like, I think once. I think I only read that one once. And it was just like most of the classic stories I've read a long time ago. I haven't read as much since graduating high school, honestly. Um, so I don't remember. So I don't remember enough to know how accurate this is to other versions or to the original story. Because it's Disney. You have to take that with a grain of salt because they change a lot usually when they adapt a book. Um, but the way this is presented basically gives us two options. Either Ichabod is completely imagining the Headless Horseman, in which case his disappearance at the end means he did leave, run away, and probably get married to someone else. Or, and this is the more likely one, it was Bronn fooling him. That it was Bronn, like, in a costume and stuff. I say the second one is more likely because the issue with it being a hallucination based on fear and anxiety and superstitious beliefs is that the horse or mule or whatever it was reacting as well. Meaning that this Headless Horseman was really physically there. So it couldn't have been a hallucination. But why are these the only two options? Because it's also very, very clear that Bronn made this whole fucking thing up. The Headless Horseman myth that he told the story of at that party, completely made up. And it's made very clear that he made that up off the top of his head. Just to scare Ick-abod. It came out of nowhere. It was a fabrication at the moment. And from everything we know of Bronn, we definitely know he could come up with something like that on the spot. That's completely believable. It's made very clear that's the case too. It's made very clear. It's like, oh, how do I get back at Ick-abod? Oh wait, he's superstitious. Let me make up a story to spook him and get him and run him out of town. It's like that's exactly what he did. So really the only explanation here is that the Headless Horseman who saw was just Bronn. And if this is believed to be the case, then Bronn went from starting out as this good-natured, little self-centered type of guy, but still, again, good-natured, kind of like popular guy in the village, to a complete raging asshole, a semi-psychopath, and an attempted murderer, because he was swinging that sword at Ick-abod's neck. And if not for Ick-abod's, just dodging and everything, he would have died. And who are we supposed to root for in this as well? Like, you definitely don't root for Bronn. Like, yeah, Ick-abod's a dick as well. He's a womanizer. He's a selfish asshole. He's a manipulator. He worms his way into people's houses, seducing the women in them to get food and shit. It's like he's a terrible person too. We can't root for him or Bronn. I guess we could maybe root for Katrina, but in the end, she just ends up like marrying Bronn anyway, and it seems like she accepts it and is happy with it, which is like, girl, no. Like, seriously here. Are we supposed to root for the one lady? Like, who just wants to dance with someone? Who Bronn, like, honestly, very clearly fat shames. Are we supposed to root for her? I guess she's like, she doesn't do anything inherently bad. I don't know. Even if you want to say this is one of those stories where there's not really a good guy per se, is this story just trying to teach a lesson? And if so, is the lesson supposed to be like, be a good person or bad things will happen to you? Because that's just kind of a very black and white, fucked up statement to make. Like, there's a lot more nuance in things than that. It just seems very generic too. And I know this is older. I know this is an old movie or special based on an older book, but still, it just seems. And I'm not just like insulting. I don't know how to feel about it. based on this interpretation at least. Because again, it's like I don't know if I'm supposed to root for any of these characters. Like, and even with like Katrina, it's like not even only does she. It's not even just that she ends up with Braun at the end and is happy about it, which is just not great. But it's also the fact she was actively stoking the fire. It actively even said, the narrator, Bing Crosby, even said that she was fanning the flames and all with writing the letter and like causing trouble between them. And it's just like, oh my god. She was kind of, I think she was enjoying these two men fighting over her. And she didn't care who actually won, even though at multiple points it seemed like she didn't like Braun and was more interested in Ick-abod. And it's just like, it's just, it was entertaining enough. Like, I'm not going to say it wasn't. It was well made. The singing obviously was great because it was Bing Crosby. Even though just like a lot of old classic singers, Bing Crosby is probably a pretty, bad person. I mean, like, compared to others, like, of that time, like, Frank Sinatra or whatnot. And it's like, oh yeah, like, Frank Sinatra was a piece of shit. He was absolutely fucking terrible. He sang good, so people either ignored or excused the fact that, he was in bed with the mafia and shit. But, he still was. And it's like just... Not gonna get into that entire shit here, okay? The point is, like, yeah, the singing was good. There wasn't really voice acting for the most part. It was mostly just Bing Crosby, I think. I think even like when Braun was talking / singing, it was Bing Crosby. I think it was just him, unless I'm wrong. And if I am, it's just like there was one other person and maybe like some background singers and voices here and there. Like, but for the most part, it was just Bing. The animation was basically what I expect for Disney at this time period. And that's by no means to say it's bad. It's just not as polished as things have become. It's very stylistic, though. It's very stylistic, and I am one who likes stylistic art. I think that it's something a lot of people turn their nose at for the sake of rather having realism, which I think is stupid. I think like with animated movies and shows and games and whatnot, the entire strive for making them look more and more realistic has hurt the overall artistic quality of a lot of these pieces of media. I think it's better when they remain more stylistic, more unique and interesting. Like Pokemon. I don't want Pokemon to look realistic. I don't want the graphics of those games to be like top of the line next gen graphics and all, because that would look terrible for Pokemon. Pokemon needs to have that stylistic approach to feel like Pokemon. Remember when Legend of Zelda tried a more not unstylistic, but a more like semi-realistic approach, a more high-end high-end graphical approach with its aesthetic with Twilight Princess. It looked like shit. I'm sorry, even if you like the game in terms of gameplay and story and mechanics and whatnot, the game looks like shit. It is so muddy and dark. It is the characters are all really fucking ugly. It just does not look good at all. And that's why the graphics for the Zelda games reverted after that, because it received backlash for how it looked. Even from people who like the game in general. That's why the graphics of the series didn't continue going in that direction. Legend of Zelda was instead brought back to what it was known for. And it succeeded again because of that. Twilight Princess is extremely divisive, and the graphics are one of the main reasons. There's other reasons too, mind you, but still, one of the main reasons. Wind Waker's graphics weren't received well either, but those were not as divisive. The issue with Wind Waker is some people thought it went too cartoony. But again, neither here nor there. The point is, I like stylistic shit. And this movie definitely kept that old classic Disney stylistic feel to it. That it was famous for at the time. And I like that. I have no issue with that. The animation was fine. The music was good. My real issues are with story and character stuff, and how I'm supposed to feel, what I'm supposed to get out of this. Maybe this is one of those stories where you're not really supposed to get anything out of it. It's just a fun, spooky story. Even though it's the vast majority of the story has nothing to do with Halloween. Like 9/10, I don't know why I chose that fraction, but 9/10 of the story is pure setup. It's just setup. Literally only the final 10th of the story is the actual payoff for everything. Literally the Headless Horseman is made up by Braun on the spot, and it's brought out of nowhere. It comes out of literally nowhere. It was never set up beforehand. It was never, even hinted at. It literally came out of nowhere. It's just suddenly, we're revealing that Ick-abod is superstitious, and Braun is going to spook him with a made-up story. Where did this come from? and then, again, you have the actual Headless Horseman appear, and it's it's very obvious, it's made very blatant that Braun made that up, so that has to be Braun there. Unless we're to believe that Braun just somehow has some kind of gift of prophecy and somehow made up a story that just happened to be real, which is just kind of unbelievable. We have to believe it was Braun chasing Ick-abod out. And again, there's no part in this by the end that makes any of them look like the good guy, the character we're supposed to root for. I'm fine with it leaving it up to a mystery, up to interpretation on whether or not Ick-abod was spirited away or just got away and ran. That's completely fine to leave up to interpretation, to leave a mystery at the end. Hell, I like that. But I just feel like the fact that this did come out of nowhere and wasn't brought up earlier in the story, both Ick-abod's superstitious nature and the Headless Horseman legend, is the big downfall of this. If the legend had been brought up even just once, if Ick-abod's superstitious nature had been brought up just once prior to this, it would have literally solved the entire issue. I would have no real issue with this film at that point. Or again, this special, whatever you want to call it. I would have no issue. Because that's really the issue here. yeah, there's still the thing about them all being kind of assholes, but you know what? I could live with that if at least this was built up. Like, maybe have some of the villagers talking about it earlier on, and maybe Bronze sees Ichabod like react to it and is confused by that reaction. But then later on during the party, he remembers that. And that's how he knows Ichabod is superstitious. And he remembers the story that Ichabod heard that caused him to act that way. And so that's why he tells that story, maybe even exaggerating and flourishing the performance a bit. But yeah, it's just that would have solved the problems. Instead, it literally comes out of nowhere at the last minute, just feeling completely disconnected from the rest of the short. The short, the special, the movie, whatever the fuck you want to call it, it feels like this the headless horseman thing was on at the end for no reason, just to remind people that this is a Halloween story. Because nothing else in this shorts at all was Halloween related. It was literally just the story about a horny dick of a school teacher who was trying to woo a girl over another dick of a dude. Like, K. And again, I don't remember how other iterations did this. I don't know like how the Johnny Depp one. Let me see if I can look that up real quick. I've seen the Johnny Depp one, so looking it up won't be spoilers or anything for me at all. Um, Johnny Depp Sleepy Hollow, which was from 1999, by the way. Um, Also, okay, it had Christina Ricci in it as Katrina, apparently. And Brom, it is Brom with an M, by the way, was Casper Van Dien. Also, Christopher Walken was the Headless Horseman. The fuck? Yeah, it was Tim Burton as well, by the way. That's fun. Okay, I just looked at the very basic plot of this, and it's already very different, because apparently in this, Ichabod Crane is a police constable who was sent from New York City to investigate a series of murders by the Headless Horseman. So very, very different take on that already. Yeah, I'm not going to look through everything here with the thing. I just want to kind of see how it ends, maybe. Oh. Um, Apparently there's Satanism in it, too. That's interesting. The horseman was freed from Van Tassel's control, and Katrina and Ichabod apparently go to New York together at the end. All right. Apparently in this, Ichabod was also squeamish at blood and bugs, but was very science forward. So that's interesting. Okay. The description of Brahm here, a strong and arrogant aristocratic man who is romantically involved with Katrina, that sounds about the same. Apparently, there's like a kid, an orphan named Mazbeth, who who sees Ichabod as a father figure as well. Yeah, it's just very odd. Seems very different, so probably not the best thing either. Oh, I got one more thing I can check. One more thing. I want to see how close this is to the book as well. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. Yeah, there we go. It's from 1820. It was a short story, so it wasn't a full book. Okay. And the 1949 short we saw here was actually the second film adaptation. That's interesting. Story set in 1790. Yeah, they mentioned the settlement of Tarrytown in there, which uh, I was thinking about, like, after I had to stop it yesterday and everything. I thought about that. And I'm like, wait a minute. Tarrytown is the name of the town in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The one that you actually help create the settlement for. That's interesting. Apparently it's a real place too. Tarrytown, New York is a real place. Let's see here. Okay, according to I'm looking at like the plot of this, and according to this, it seems to actually talk about like superstitious stuff early on. Although not everything about that is great. It looks like there's maybe some let's just call it bigotry spread about Native Americans here, using that as one of the possible explanations for the superstitious shit going on. But yeah, it looks like it even says here like the inhabitants of Sleepy Hollow are fascinated by the local tales, haunted spots, and twilight superstitions. Also says that Ichabod did a lot more for the families that he was staying with and stuff, like doing farm work, mending fences, caring for animals, cutting firewood, stuff we did not see at all in here. He also helped the mothers of the town take care of their young children and was gentle and ingratiating. He was still popular amongst the women for his education and his talent for carrying the whole budget of local gossip. Okay. Yeah, and it mentions his competition with Brahm here for Katrina's hand. Okay, and this was different too. In this, Crane Ichabod wanted to marry Katrina just for her family's wealth. That was not in this special at all. Apparently, the only reason he wanted to marry Katrina was because of her wealth. That's insane. So he was terrible even in the original story. Brahm tried, I guess, to force Ichabod into like a fight, but was unable to. Instead, started doing pranks on him, So that was also different because in this he was trying to goad him into fighting and was trying to just basically beat him up. Really, the only prank was the story at the end, at the party. Yeah, listens to ghostly legends told by Brahm. Yep. This makes it seem like the story didn't scare him off, though. He was going to propose to Katrina, but he fails to do so and rides off because of it. He's also like very sad at this part instead of scared. So there's a lot of changes they made, a lot of things they left out. It seems. He does start to get nervous though, thinking about the ghost stories. Yep. They cross the bridge. The horseman hurls his severed head instead of a pumpkin. Obviously, we understand why Disney had to change that. The pumpkin is kind of more iconic at this point with the story, probably because of this version. Um, but yeah, in the original story, it's literally just his severed head. Apparently, the severed head hits him in the head, hits Ichabod in the head, and he falls away. Um, which we don't see in this. We just see the pumpkin being hurled at him, and then it just kind of cuts. Also, the horse, Gunpowder is its name, is listed as being temperamental and stuff in here. Instead, he was just kind of like sad and ridiculous. I mean, not really temperamental in this Disney version. But yeah, Katrina does marry Brahm. Oh, here's something interesting. Leaving Katrina to later marry Brom Bones, who was said to look exceedingly knowing whenever the story of Ichabod was related. So it's implied in the story that Brom was behind it. The only relics of the schoolmaster's flight are his discarded hat, yep, Gunpowder's trampled saddle, and a mysterious shattered pumpkin. Okay, so a pumpkin was brought up to it. Okay, so that's where that came from, at least. The story implies that the horseman was really Brahm, who is noted to be an extremely agile rider in disguise, using a jack-o'-lantern as a false head. Okay, so it might not have actually been a severed head. It's never, like, I guess directly said, but it's implied. So okay, I actually guessed that correctly. I actually I got from that what I was supposed to get from that. Um, and it suggests that Crane did survive the fall and fled Sleepy Hollow in horror, and never to return and but prosper elsewhere. Or it could be implied that he was killed by Brahm, which may be unlikely since Brahm was said to have more mischief than ill will. Though honestly, at least in this story, it started that way, but it kind of changed. He kind of became more ill will. But I don't think he killed him. I don't think he did. Um, yeah, and the Dutch wives continue to promote the belief that Ichabod was spirited away by supernatural means. But yeah. So you're supposed to take away the idea that Brahm faked it. That is the intent. It seems like there was a lot of stuff left out, and obviously things changed. Like, obviously they never painted the pumpkin as a severed head, even from Ichabod's point of view. Um, it seems like Ichabod at least believed it to be a severed head, because he was already spooked by the superstitious stuff and everything. But in reality, it was probably just the pumpkin. Um, in this version, in the Disney version, it was just a pumpkin the entire time. Um, Although it was never shown prior to the end. Before that, we just saw the horseman riding with the sword and everything. He didn't have the pumpkin until the end. In the story, the severed head was always at his side and everything. So interesting changes it seems, but most of it seems to be actually pretty accurate. Just obviously made a little more family friendly for fair reasons. But yeah, I got out of that exactly what you're supposed to get out of it. So again, it's been a long time, and I think I've only read this story once. Um, so I didn't remember exactly how it went. It's not like Dracula or books like that I've read multiple times. And even then, I don't remember everything about those stories. um, but yeah, it's nonetheless interesting to see this kind of from mostly fresh eyes because I've never seen this version and I didn't remember too much of how the story went down. Plus, I've seen a lot of different versions that did things differently, so. But, like the Johnny Depp one. But still, that's very interesting. That it actually, in the actual story, is implied to be Brahm. And that there's never implication that the Headless Horseman was actually real. Even if the old wives of the town of the village believed it. But old wives' tale and all. um, so sorry for these long afterthoughts. I wanted to rant on some stuff and look all that up. Um, I had fun with this though. Even though I was kind of confused about the ending and thought that things should have been brought up earlier, which they seem to have been done in the original story from what I read there. It seems like a lot of that superstitious stuff was brought up earlier, which I really feel like they should have in this still. I still had fun. It was fun. But yeah. Hope you enjoyed this very Halloween oriented reaction. Um, and for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Uh, See y'all next time.